Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you built your entire world within the walls of their heart? I did. For 48 years, my universe revolved around my husband, Arthur, and our daughter, Isabella. I was the architect of our happiness. Every meticulously planned birthday party, with homemade cakes towering like monuments of joy. Every holiday adorned with twinkling lights and traditions passed down like heirlooms. Every quiet Sunday morning where the aroma of fresh brewed coffee mingled with the rustle of newspaper pages and Arthur's soft humming of an old jazz tune. I believed family was a fortress, an unshakable sanctuary built on layers of shared laughter, whispered confidences, and the kind of love that weathers storms without a single crack. But the day Arthur passed, those fortress walls turned to fragile glass, and the people I loved most were the ones who shattered them with careless hands. If you have ever felt the sting of betrayal from those who were supposed to be your safe harbor, your family, your blood, your everything, then you understand why I'm here, sharing this raw, unfiltered truth. Welcome to Shattered Voices, a channel dedicated to those who have been broken by the very hands meant to hold us and chose, against all odds, to rebuild themselves. Stronger, wiser, and unapologetically whole. If you're new here, make your voice part of our chorus. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that reminds you your pain is valid, your power is undeniable. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Savannah? Seattle? Somewhere in between? Your story matters here, just as much as mine. My name is Vivian Ross. I am 70 years old now, but in the rearview mirror of my life, I see a woman who once danced through days with the lightness of someone who thought love was eternal. My husband, Arthur, was a history professor at the University of Georgia, a man of quiet intellect and profound kindness. His office was a sanctuary of leather-bound volumes and faded maps, where he'd trace the paths of ancient explorers with the same reverence he traced the lines of my palm during our evening walks. We built a life in a charming, book-filled craftsman home in the historic district of Savannah, Georgia, a place where Spanish moss draped like lace from live oaks, and the air carried the faint, salty whisper of the nearby river. Our life was a tapestry of gentle routines and deep, unspoken love. Arthur grading papers by the firelight while I sketched watercolor florals in my journal. Weekend picnics in Forsyth Park, where Isabella would chase fireflies as a child, her giggles echoing like music. Quiet anniversaries celebrated with a single bottle of aged Bordeaux and stories of how we met, at a dusty bookstore reaching for the same volume of Emily Dickinson. When pancreatic cancer took him from me 3 years ago, it wasn't just a loss, it was an amputation of the soul. The diagnosis came like a thief in the night, sudden, ruthless, leaving me staring at sterile hospital walls as machines beeped their indifferent countdown. Arthur fought with the grace of a scholar facing his final thesis, reading aloud from his favorite histories even as his voice grew thin. "Vivian," he'd say, squeezing my hand, "our story isn't ending, it's just turning the page." But when he slipped away in the hush of dawn, holding a photo of us on our wedding day, the silence that followed was a physical presence, heavy and suffocating, like wet wool draped over my chest. The house, once alive with his footsteps and the clink of his teacup, became a mausoleum of echoes. I'd wake to the empty side of the bed, trace the indentation where his head once rested, and wonder how a heart could fracture so completely without drawing blood. Our daughter, Isabella, and her husband, Robert, lived in a sleek, modern condominium in Atlanta's bustling midtown, a world of glass walls and minimalist decor that felt as cold as it looked. Isabella was 42 then, an interior designer whose eye for elegance masked a growing fragility I hadn't yet seen. "You can't stay in that big, empty house, Mom," she insisted over a hurried phone call, her voice laced with a concern that, I would learn, was as fragile as tissue paper, masking deeper anxieties. "Come live with us. We have plenty of space in the guest suite. It's got its own entrance, a little kitchenette. It'll be good for all of us." Her words carried the weight of duty, but I heard the unspoken plea beneath. "Don't leave me alone with this life I've chosen." So, with a heart still raw and a mind clouded by grief, I sold our home, the place where every floorboard creaked with a memory of Arthur's laughter, where Isabella had learned to ride her first bicycle on the front porch. I packed away the life we'd woven and moved north to Atlanta, hoping proximity might mend what distance had begun to fray. Robert was a venture capitalist, a man in his mid-40s with a jawline sharp as his spreadsheets, and eyes that appraised everything, people included, through the cold lens of assets and liabilities. From the start, I sensed I was being tallied on some invisible ledger. His disdain was a subtle poison, dripping in through cracks I tried to seal with goodwill. He'd make offhand comments at breakfast about the incremental costs of supporting a third adult, his tone light but his gaze appraising, like I was a line item in his quarterly report. At their dinner parties, glossy affairs with tech bros and influencers, he'd jokingly refer to me as the permanent guest, eliciting awkward chuckles from guests who didn't know better. I tried to make myself indispensable, a shadow weaving utility into their polished routine, cooking gourmet meals from Arthur's dog-eared recipe cards, like herb-crusted rack of lamb that filled their condo with warmth, managing their household accounts with the precision of my old volunteer bookkeeping at the library, even tending a lush herb garden on their balcony, where basil and rosemary flourished under my careful hands, a small rebellion against the urban concrete. But my every effort was met with Robert's cool indifference, a curt nod over his phone screen, and Isabella's nervous avoidance, her smiles tight as drawn curtains. "Don't mind him, Mom," she'd whisper in stolen moments, her eyes darting to the door as if he might overhear. "He's just stressed from a big deal at work. You know how he gets under pressure. It's not about you." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, because what else could I do? Deny the growing chill in the air? Pretend I didn't hear the late-night arguments filtering through the walls, Robert's voice rising like a storm. "This isn't what we signed up for, Issa. She's not our responsibility." I told myself it was temporary, that grief had a way of magnifying shadows. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "You're an intruder in your own daughter's home." The night of my eviction unfolded like a nightmare scripted by Kafka, all bureaucracy and betrayal wrapped in the finery of civility. I had prepared coq au vin that evening, a recipe Arthur had always loved, a slow-simmered symphony of chicken, mushrooms, and burgundy wine that filled the condo with rich, comforting aromas. I'd set the table with their best linens, lit candles to chase away the gathering dusk, hoping for a moment of normalcy. But the atmosphere at the table was frigid, the silverware clinking like accusations in the silence. Robert set his wineglass down with a sharp, definitive clink, the sound slicing through the tension like a guillotine. Vivian, he began, his tone that of a CEO addressing an underperforming employee, his napkin folded precisely beside his plate. We need to transition this situation. Isabella and I are at a stage in our lives where we require privacy and flexibility, space to focus on our careers, our future. We've researched excellent continuing care facilities in the area, places with top-tier amenities, vibrant communities. We feel it's the best long-term solution for everyone involved. The word facility struck me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. A facility? As if I were a piece of outdated furniture to be warehoused? I turned to Isabella, my eyes pleading across the candlelit table, searching for the girl who'd once curled in my lap during thunderstorms. Isa, a facility? Is this what you want? She couldn't look at me. Her manicured fingers twisted the napkin in her lap into a knotted mess, her plate untouched. It's a really beautiful place, Mom, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes fixed on some invisible point on the wall. They have a pool, art classes, and bridge tournaments. You'd make friends there. It's not forever or anything. In that moment, I didn't see my daughter, the vibrant child who'd painted murals on our garage walls, the young woman who'd called me her rock during her own wedding vows. I saw a stranger, hollowed out by compromise, her spirit bent under the weight of Robert's expectations. The coq au vin congealed untouched on my plate, its warmth mocking the ice in my veins. I said nothing. Words felt too heavy, too futile. I rose from the table on legs that felt like lead, my napkin fluttering to the floor like a white flag of surrender. In the sterile confines of my guest suite, I packed 2 suitcases with mechanical precision, a few blouses, Arthur's favorite scarf, the photo album from our honeymoon in the Smoky Mountains. As I wheeled them down the polished hallway, the wheels humming a dirge on the hardwood, I heard Robert's voice from the dining room, low and satisfied. It's about time. We can finally breathe. Isabella did not come to say goodbye. No hug, no tearful apology, just the echo of my footsteps fading into the elevator's ding. I stood on the gleaming marble steps of their high-rise, the humid Atlanta air feeling like a slap across my flushed cheeks, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. I was 70 years old, a widow unmoored, with 2 suitcases, a purse clutching my life savings, and a heart that had been carved out with surgical cruelty. The cab ride to the Peachtree Inn on the outskirts of the city was a blur of rain-slicked streets and neon signs flickering like false promises. The motel was a faded relic, peeling wallpaper in the lobby, a clerk who handed over the key without a second glance. My room smelled of stale smoke and regret, the neon sign outside sputtering "Peachtree Inn" in erratic bursts. The air conditioning unit rattled like a dying man's breath, and I lay on the stiff floral print bedspread, staring at water stains on the ceiling that mapped out constellations of loss. That first night, the silence consumed me, not the gentle quiet of Savannah evenings, but a voracious void that swallowed sobs and whispered doubts. How did I become disposable? Was our love ever real, or just a convenient chapter? I texted Isabella from the dim glow of my phone. I'm settled at a motel for now. I love you. Call if you need me. No response. The read receipt taunted me, a digital ghost. A week later, on the anniversary of her father's death, the date etched in my bones like a scar, I tried again. Thinking of Dad and you today. Miss our traditions. Love always. Nothing.
The silence stretched like a chasm, each unanswered message a stone dropped into its depths.
My savings were a finite resource, a modest nest egg from Arthur's pension and my part-time editing gigs, and I watched them dwindle with a growing cold terror that clawed at my sleep. I applied for jobs with the desperation of a woman rewriting her own obituary, a receptionist at a bustling law firm downtown where the interviewer smiled sympathetically but cited cultural fit, a greeter at the High Museum of Art, a role I'd dreamed of, only to be told my enthusiasm was noted but we're seeking someone more energetic. Even a companion for the elderly through a local agency, ironing the cruel irony that I'd become the very help I once provided. The rejections piled up like unread letters, polite but firm emails that reduced me to overqualified, or worse, invisible. At 70, I was a relic in a world that prized youth and hustle, my resume a testament to a life of nurturing rather than climbing. Interviews became mirrors reflecting back my frayed edges, gray roots hastily dyed, hands trembling slightly from nights of fitful rest. Who would hire a ghost? Weeks bled into months. The motel's hum a constant companion to my unraveling. The loneliness was a cancer, metastasizing into every corner, meals eaten from vending machines, evenings spent watching rain streak the window, like tears I couldn't cry anymore. But the shame was worse, a corrosive acid eating at my core. I had poured my life into Isabella, midnight feedings when she was colicky, driving her to soccer practices through Savannah downpours, cheering her through college finals with care packages of her favorite lemon bars. And she had poured me out like stale milk, discarded without a second thought. I wandered the motel's cracked parking lot at dusk, chain-smoking menthols I hadn't touched since Arthur's diagnosis, questioning every choice that led here. Was I too soft? Too giving? Did I teach her love by example, only for her to learn indifference? One rain-soaked evening, hollowed out by despair that pressed like a stone on my chest, I pulled a single, dusty cardboard box from under the motel bed. It was filled with the fragile archaeology of my life, yellowed photo albums, capturing Isabella's gap-toothed grins, Arthur's love letters penned in his looping script. My Vivian, you are the footnote that makes history worth reading. My father's old, worn briefcase with its brass latches dulled by decades. My father, Walter, had been a quiet, meticulous accountant in Savannah, a man of ledgers and early bedtimes. We were never close. His affections were doled out in practicalities like new tires for my first car or a stern nod at my wedding. But as I fiddled with the briefcase in the motel's harsh fluorescent light, my fingers brushed a hidden panel at the base, springing open with a soft click. Tucked inside was a sealed manila envelope, brittle with age, its edges frayed like forgotten promises. Inside were not the financial documents I had expected, but love letters. Dozens of them, tied with a faded silk ribbon the color of dried rose petals. They were from a man named Alastair Thorpe to my mother, Elizabeth, a woman I'd known only through sepia photos and vague stories of her delicate health that took her too soon. The script was bold, passionate, ink flowing like molten emotion across the pages. My dearest Elizabeth, one began, dated 1952, every moment away from you is a theft of time, a robbery of the soul. This business with the shipping company consumes me.
boardrooms and contracts that feel like chains. But it is all for us, for the future I promise you with every beat of this weary heart. Walter is a good man, steady as the tides, and he will provide you the stability I cannot yet offer publicly, not with the eyes of society upon us. But know this, my love, the child you carry is mine, our secret flame in the darkness. I have secured her future, a trust managed by my most discreet associate, a barrister in Charleston named Mr. Pendleton. She will want for nothing. Education, security, a legacy whispered on the wind if the world demands silence. She is my blood, my boldest venture, even if the stars never align to claim her openly.
Alastair Thorpe. The name was a monument etched into the annals of Southern industry. The founder of Thorpe Global Shipping, an industrial titan whose fleets once dominated Atlantic trade routes, a man whose philanthropy stamped his name on university libraries, hospital wings, and scholarships for underprivileged youth. Not Walter, the honorable cuckold who raised me with quiet duty, but Alastair, the storm to my mother's gentle rain, my true father. The revelation crashed over me not as shock, but as a key turning in a long locked door. My hands did not tremble. Instead, a strange, icy clarity settled over me, like fog lifting from the harbor at dawn. I was not a cast-off widow, adrift in motels and rejection slips. I was a secret scion, heir to a hidden empire. For the first time in months, I slept without the weight of the world on my chest.
It took me a week of meticulous research, poring over public records in the motel's flickering Wi-Fi, cross-referencing dusty library microfiche during rare outings, to locate Mr. Lawrence Pendleton. His firm occupied a historic building on Charleston's Battery, a grand edifice of wrought iron and stucco, overlooking the harbor where ships ghosted like memories. I composed a letter in careful, looping cursive, echoing my mother's hand from the photos. To the steward of legacies past, I am Vivian Ross, daughter of Elizabeth and Alastair. The ribbon has unraveled. It is time to weave the truth. I mailed it from a post office that smelled of salt and possibility, then waited, breath held, as the days ticked by. He called within 48 hours, his voice a dry, cultured baritone crackling through the motel's landline like aged scotch. "Vivian Ross," he intoned, as if reciting from a will long prepared. "I have been the steward of this truth for 5 decades, guardian of shadows in a world of spotlights. It is time, at long last, for you to step into the light and claim what is yours. Come to Charleston. The harbor awaits." I took a train south the next morning, the rhythmic clack of rails a metronome to my rebirth. Charleston's air wrapped around me like an old friend, jasmine and brine, history humming in the cobblestones. Pendleton's office was a room of quiet power, paneled in dark mahogany but gleamed like polished secrets, smelling of old leather, beeswax, and the faint ink of forgotten deeds. He was in his 80s, sharp as a quill, with wire-rimmed glasses and a tweed suit that hung on his frame like a flag of endurance. Over Darjeeling tea and porcelain cups, he didn't just hand me a statement. He unfolded a narrative, layer by intricate layer. Alastair Thorpe, bound by a prearranged marriage to a shipping heiress and the cutthroat politics of his empire, had loved Elizabeth fiercely but fleetingly, a whirlwind romance in the shadowed corners of 1950s high society. Walter, Elizabeth's childhood friend, and Alastair's silent ally, had stepped in as the veil, raising me with the dignity of a proxy father. The inheritance wasn't a vulgar windfall, but a meticulously diversified portfolio, blue-chip stocks yielding steady dividends, a minority but controlling stake in a boutique hotel chain dotting the eastern seaboard, substantial, quiet ownership of commercial properties from Savannah lofts to Charleston warehouses. The value was staggering, enough to eclipse lifetimes of scrimping, but the number that made me weep, hot tears tracing paths down my cheeks, was the one in the trust's preamble. For Vivian Elizabeth Thorpe, my unseen star, may your light burn brighter than any fleet on the sea. I did not return to Atlanta's motel purgatory. With Pendleton's guidance, I leased a stunning, airy penthouse apartment in a restored historic building in Charleston's French Quarter. A sun-drenched eyrie with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the spires of St. Philip's Church and the distant sparkle of the Ashley River. Exposed brick walls whispered of centuries past, and I filled the spaces with pieces of my reclaimed self. Arthur's armchair reupholstered in vibrant teal, shelves groaning under Alistair's donated first editions from the Thorpe Library. I hired a shrewd, empathetic financial advisor named Elena, a no-nonsense Latina in her 50s who became my co-conspirator, teaching me the arcane arts of wealth stewardship. I became a scholar of power, devouring books on silent partnerships, shell companies, and the ballet of anonymous acquisition. No longer Vivian the homemaker, I was Vivian the visionary. I established an LLC named Elysian Holdings, a subtle nod to my mother, Elizabeth, Elysian, the paradise of the blessed, where the discarded find their throne.
And then, through a discreet business contact at a Charleston chamber luncheon where power brokers sipped bourbon under palmetto fans, I found my opportunity for poetic reckoning. A 12-unit luxury apartment building in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward, a neighborhood pulsing with revitalized energy and historic charm. It was a beautiful, brick-faced property with arched windows and wrought-iron balconies, financially sound but burdened by a disengaged ownership group eager to liquidate amid market shifts. The location? A serendipitous twist of fate. It was Isabella and Robert's building, their gleaming high-rise now a target in my crosshairs. Elena orchestrated the acquisition through a labyrinth of intermediaries, trusts within trusts, proxies upon proxies, ensuring the transaction was silent, swift, and utterly anonymous. The day the deed was recorded in Fulton County's ledgers, I stood on my Charleston balcony, the salt air kissing my face like a benediction, and felt the tectonic plates of my life shift irrevocably. The supplicant was gone. In her place stood a sovereign, her scepter forged from forgotten letters and unclaimed fortunes. The first notice to tenants was a model of corporate professionalism, mailed on heavy stock with the Elysian Holdings letterhead gleaming in embossed gold. "Dear valued resident," it began, "due to a comprehensive reassessment of market values and a planned multi-million-dollar renovation of amenities and infrastructure, including a state-of-the-art fitness center, enhanced security, and curated communal spaces, rents will be substantially adjusted effective the 1st of next month. We appreciate your understanding as we elevate this property to its fullest potential." For the penthouse unit, Isabella and Robert's eyrie of excess, the new rent was 5 times its previous rate, a figure calibrated not for greed, but for gravity, enough to unsettle foundations without toppling innocence. Robert's reaction was a symphony of impotent rage, a masterpiece of unraveling composure. He fired off emails to the faceless management team, threads bulging with legal jargon pilfered from late-night Google dives, breach of good faith, predatory pricing, antitrust implications, laced with threats of lawsuits and regulatory complaints. He demanded a face-to-face meeting with the cowardly conglomerate that dared to challenge his dominion, his missives growing more frantic, typos betraying the cracks in his facade. Isabella's voicemails arrived like distress signals, increasingly desperate amid the static of her life fracturing. "Mom, something insane is happening here. Our rent has quadrupled. No, quintupled. Robert is
He's not sleeping, pacing like a caged animal. He's talking about lawyers, about financial ruin, about having to downsize. I don't know what to do. I need you. Please, call me back." I did not call back. Instead, I let them marinate in the consequences of their choices, the bitter broth they'd brewed now simmering to a boil. From Charleston, I authorized the renovations with Elena's input, a new rooftop infinity pool shimmering like liquid sapphire under Atlanta's skyline, a state-of-the-art fitness center with yoga studios and Peloton ranks, a 24/7 concierge service offering everything from dry cleaning to event planning. The other tenants were ecstatic, their feedback flooding inboxes with praise, young professionals thrilled at the upgrades, families grateful for the enhanced play areas. Robert's fury, unwittingly, was funding their luxury, a redistribution of wealth wrapped in the poetry of justice. I watched it unfold from afar, a quiet smile curving my lips as property values soared and vacancy rates plummeted. The poetic symmetry was not lost on me. The man who'd tallied me as a liability now footed the bill for a building's rebirth. I saw them once through a live feed from the building's new state-of-the-art security system, a perk of ownership I accessed via an encrypted app on my tablet. It was a late-night glitch in the lobby cameras, capturing an argument raw as an open wound. Isabella looked gaunt, her once lustrous hair pulled into a hasty ponytail, and her elegant sheath dresses hanging loosely on a frame thinned by stress. Robert's face was a mottled mask of fury, veins bulging at his temples as he gestured wildly. "This is sabotage! Some vulture swooping in! I'll bury them in court fees!" She clutched her arms around herself, whispering pleas for calm that dissolved into sobs. The mother in me ached, a visceral twist like labor pains revisited. My girl, what have they done to you? The woman I had become, forged in motels and manila envelopes, stood resolute, fingers hovering over the screen. This is the cost of complicity. Learn from it, as I did.
The final strategic move was a mandatory town hall for all tenants, convened in the building's newly renovated common room, a sunlit space with exposed beams and plush seating to review the renovation plans and unveil new building policies. I knew Robert would be there, hungering for confrontation like a wolf scenting blood. I flew to Atlanta on a crisp autumn morning, the city's skyline rising like a challenge. I arrived at the meeting early, dressed in a tailored cream-colored suit that hugged my still graceful frame, my silver hair styled in a sophisticated chignon that spoke of boardrooms, not bedside vigils. A string of pearls, Alistair's gift to Elizabeth, now mine, rested at my throat like armor. I was unrecognizable as the grieving woman they'd discarded months before, my posture a testament to rediscovered poise. The common room filled with a murmur of anticipation, tenants sipping complimentary coffee, flipping through glossy renderings of the upgrades. Robert stormed in like a thunderclap, Isabella trailing behind him like a ghost in oversized cashmere, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He immediately accosted the property manager, a poised young woman named Tara, briefed and unflappable, demanding answers with the bluster of a man unused to denial. "I demand to speak to the decision-maker, now! This rent hike is extortion!" Tara remained placid, her smile professional as polished stone. "All will be revealed in due course, Mr. Carter. Please take a seat, we're about to begin." The presentation unfolded smoothly. Slides projecting visions of luxury, a poolside lounge with cabanas, a wine-tasting event series, eco-friendly landscaping that would bloom with azaleas come spring. Gasps of delight rippled through the crowd. Then Tara paused, her remote clicking to a final slide. The Elysian Holdings logo, ethereal and unyielding. The ownership group is deeply committed to this property's legacy. In fact, the principal is here with us tonight to answer your questions directly and ensure transparency. I stood slowly, the room falling into a hush as eyes turned. Whispers skittered like leaves in wind. I walked to the front with measured steps, my heels clicking authority on the hardwood, my gaze steady as a compass. I watched the confusion on Robert's face,
morph into stunned, purple-faced disbelief, his coffee cup forgotten in his grip. Isabella's eyes widened, a hand flying to her mouth as dawning, horrifying comprehension bloomed. "Mother." "Good evening," I said, my voice resonating in the quiet room like a bell-tolling truth, clear and unyielding after years of whispers. "My name is Vivian Ross. I am the principal of Elysian Holdings. I am your landlord, and for some of you, perhaps a familiar face in an unfamiliar light." Robert shot to his feet, chair scraping like a scream, his face engorged with rage. "This is an outrage. This is a personal vendetta, plain and simple. I'll have you in court for harassment, for emotional distress, whatever it takes to drag this farce into the light." I met his gaze evenly, my expression one of mild, professional curiosity, as if he were a minor clause in a contract. "Mr. Carter, this is not personal, though I understand why it might feel that way. It's a simple matter of asset valuation and return on investment. The market demands excellence. We've answered it with it. The numbers are clear, audited, and above board. If you find the terms disagreeable, you are, of course, free to seek housing elsewhere. Atlanta's rental market is robust. I'm sure you'll land on your feet." He was sputtering now, utterly deflated, words tumbling like dominoes. This isn't..." The illusion of his control, his spreadsheets, his swagger, shattered in the space of a breath, leaving him exposed, diminished. Isabella stepped forward then, weaving through the stunned seats, her voice a broken whisper that carried on the still air. "Mother, why? How could you do this to us? To me?" I looked at her fully, and for the first time since that eviction night, I allowed the full weight of my hurt to show in my eyes, not as accusation, but as a mirror held to her choices. The room watched, breath held, but this was our reckoning, private, in its public glare. Because, Isabella, you needed to understand the cost of your silence. You needed to see what happens when you allow someone to treat your mother as if she were disposable, a situation to transition, a guest past her welcome. I gave you my everything, and you stood by while he carved me out. This isn't revenge, darling. It's revelation. Feel the weight of it, as I did, in that motel bed. And when you're ready to lift it together, I'll be waiting." I turned and walked out of the room then, the door clicking softly behind me, leaving them in the wreckage of their own making. The power was no longer in the confrontation, laced with venom. It was in the walking away, head high, heart scarred but steady. Applause rippled faintly from the other tenants, solidarity from strangers who sensed the undercurrent of justice. But I didn't linger for bows. The jet back to Charleston carried me over the city like a phoenix surveying ashes.
In the days that followed, Robert's threats escalated into a barrage, voicemails ranting about unethical power plays, emails probing my finances with invasive demands. He even threatened to expose my illegitimate inheritance to the press, waving the letters like a blackmailer's blade. But Mr. Pendleton was a fortress of foresight. We countered with a dossier thicker than a Tolstoy novel, detailing Robert's own attempts to fraudulently access private financial records via shady online investigators, his history of harassing communications to past landlords, and a timeline of his stressed outbursts that bordered on emotional abuse. Delivered by courier to his office with a cease and desist chaser, it landed like a velvet hammer. The fight evaporated from him overnight, poof, like smoke from a snuffed candle. Whispers reached me through mutual acquaintances. He'd packed a bag, left a curt note citing irreconcilable differences, and vanished to a consulting gig in Austin, tail between his legs, empire reduced to echoes. Isabella came to me in Charleston 3 weeks later, unannounced, carrying my father's, Walter's, briefcase, like a peace offering wrapped in guilt. She'd found it among the things she'd hastily packed during the move, its hidden panel ajar, the letters spilling their secrets. She knocked on my penthouse door in the pouring rain, soaked to the bone, mascara streaking like war paint. "I read them, Mom," she said, collapsing into my arms on the threshold, her face streaked with tears that mingled with the downpour. All of it, Alistair, the trust, the lies we lived without knowing.
I understand now, or I'm starting to. I was a coward, blind to the raw in my own home. I traded my backbone for a quiet life, for Robert's approvals and Instagram perfect evenings. And I lost everything that mattered. You, Dad's memory, even myself. Our reconciliation is a slow, deliberate process, like tending a fragile, frostbitten plant back to bloom. One careful watering, one patient sunning at a time. She moved into a modest one-bedroom nearby, funded by a small bridge loan from Elysian Holdings. No strings, just a fresh start. She's in therapy twice a week, unpacking layers of codependency with a counselor who specializes in late-in-life awakenings. She started her own small interior design business, Isa Bloom Studios, focusing on sustainable spaces for women-led startups. Her portfolio already budding with commissions for cozy cafes and home offices that feel like sanctuaries. We have long, difficult, and honest conversations over Sunday brunches on my balcony, dissecting that eviction dinner, the voicemails she ignored, the mornings I spent invisible in their home. Laughter creeps in sometimes, tentative as spring thaw. Stories of Isabella's childhood mischief, Arthur's corny puns. The trust is not fully restored, scarred like a healed wound, but a new, more truthful foundation is being laid, one where apologies are actions, not echoes. With the dust settled, I sold the Atlanta building to a socially conscious developer committed to affordable housing tiers amid the luxury. A significant portion of the proceeds, clean, karmic millions, established the Elizabeth Grant, a nonprofit lifeline I poured my architect's heart into. Named after my mother, the woman who loved boldly in shadows, it provides transitional housing in charming, low-rise complexes across Georgia and South Carolina. Sunlit suites with kitchens stocked for independence, on-site career counseling led by fierce women like Elena, workshops on financial literacy and digital resumes tailored for those over 60. We've housed over 50 women so far, divorcees reclaiming credit scores, widows launching Etsy empires after fleeing an abusive son-in-law, grandmothers patenting inventions born of necessity. Their stories fuel me. Maria, 68, who turned her quilting hobby into a micro-business after fleeing an abusive son-in-law, Lorraine, 72, now a certified life coach, mentoring at her centers. The Elizabeth Grant isn't charity, it's reclamation, a chorus of broken voices harmonizing into symphonies of strength. The rest of the proceeds secures my future, a future I design on my own terms, a beautiful, light-filled home by the sea in Sullivan's Island, where waves crash like applause and dunes bloom with sea oats. It's a bungalow of weathered shingles and wraparound porches, filled with art from local galleries, vibrant abstracts that echo my rebirth, bookshelves sagging under histories Arthur adored, and biographies of trailblazing women like Elizabeth Thorpe might have been. Mornings begin with yoga on the deck, afternoons with volunteer shifts at the Grant, evenings lost in journaling or calls with Isabella. Peace is an absence of storm. It's the calm eye where I stand sovereign. They thought they had silenced me, Robert with his ledgers, Isabella with her averted eyes. They thought they had won, that grief was my ending, my quiet a surrender. But they mistook my quiet for weakness, my grief for defeat, my giving for gullibility. I was not the final chapter of a sad story, fading into footnotes. I was the beginning of my own epic, a saga of secrets unearthed, powers claimed, and reckonings whispered like thunder. Your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth, no matter how close they once stood. Your strength is not measured by the weight of the burdens you carry, the evictions, the silences, the betrayals, but by the grace with which you eventually set them down, dust yourself off, and choose to carry yourself forward, head high, heart open to the next horizon. If this story of quiet resilience and triumphant reclamation found a home in your heart, stirring that spark of, I can too, then share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own unyielding power. A friend nursing wounds, a sister doubting her step. Let it ripple. Subscribe to Shattered Voices and join a community that turns broken pieces into masterpieces, where we swap stories in the comments, host live Q&As on rebuilding after betrayal, and celebrate wins big and small. Your voice, your story, your survival, it all matters, woven into our tapestry. Tell us in the comments today one thing you are reclaiming for yourself right now. Is it boundaries, joy, a long-forgotten dream? Thank you for listening, for holding space in this vast digital world. And remember, the most powerful reckonings are often the quietest ones, the ones that echo longest. Until next time, be bold in your becoming.